no use prolonging it. Okay, then, folks, we're here with another episode of BS Busters, and I mean, I would say it's been a long time, but we have one every week. So let's
Minus
dive
vacation
into it.
times, of course.
Yes, let's dive into it. So here we are with another episode of BS Busters. I'm joined here by Joel Ryder Moonstar.
Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. And it's going to be fun on the BS Busters, even though they're grind our fangs about.
Yeah, so before we get into the main topic of this BS Busters, which it's in the title, the Final Fantasy Fallacy. Yes, let's talk about some of the topics that we have. So this is some of the big news. Bandai Namco, I think we talked about this last week, but we can go a little bit more in depth into it. Bandai Namco wanting Nintendo fans to ask for, to ask if they want games to come to the Switch. This was announced.
What some of our game developers said for their game of choice, port begging.
Well, yeah, but they're like, well, show that you want these games. That's not our job. We're consumers. You put out a product, and if it appeals to us, we'll buy it. But we're not going to beg for a game to come to our system, because here's the thing. I don't know about you, but me personally, I have a PC. I have a Switch. I have a 3DS. I have a PS3. I'll probably get a PS4 this holiday season. Like, I have multiple avenues to get third-party games. I'm not going to beg for a game to come to the Switch.
I gave up. I gave that up when I saw how they treated the Wii U. It grinded my gears so badly.
Yeah, I mean,
I saw potential of gameplay, and what did some people do?
Ignored it.
They hit the B button and skipped evolving their game to a higher level.
Yeah. And so, here's the thing. The Switch is the hottest thing out right now. The Xbox One X is coming out, or did it already come out? Is it coming out this month, or did it already come out?
It's coming.
Okay. The Xbox One X is going to come out. It's not going to do anything. I'm calling it right now. It's going to come out, and it's going to flop, just like the Xbox One.
I was about to say, the porn box is going to fail as badly as Pro.
Yeah, the triple X box is not going to do anything, okay? It's just going to sit there and just wait. It's going to sit there and just be a waste of time. And Microsoft knows the triple X box is not going to do that well. Like, they're already preparing themselves for it not to do well. So, I mean, the Switch is the hot console right now. And, why aren't you guys jumping on board? Well, I mean, because you're seeing all these games. People are like, why is it this game on the Switch? Well, this game came out before the Switch was announced. Why is it this game on the Switch? Why aren't you these games? And here's the thing, like, having a slightly downgraded version of the game, because there are people who will buy a game on the Switch, even if it's slightly downgraded, because it's portable. So, once again, why aren't you people getting on board?
I could tell you a few reasons, but we'll go over those later, I think.
Well, I mean, yeah, there are quite a few reasons. Our next topic is from EA locking content behind loot crates, which, I mean, there's nothing new with first-person and third-person shooter games that are online-specific, multiplayer-heavy games, locking things behind loot crates. The problem is that, from what I heard, is that Battlefront 2 is particularly egregious about it. That's what I heard.
Please tell me there's not certain weapons that are OP in there that you have to use.
I don't know about that. What I heard was that basically the basic weapons and loadouts that you can get just from playing the game are okay. But if you want to get decent stuff, you got to use the loot crates, and the loot crates use real world money. So like like you can get like 5 of them for real world money, 2 of them, 1 of them for real world money, or you can grind for points, but grinding for points is much harder than real world money. So yeah.
Hold it. You said grinding for is worse than real world money, or did you say the equivalent of it?
I said grinding for points through normal gameplay that you can use, that you can then spend on loot crate stuff, is harder than you just spending real world money. Like because the gamer mentality is like, why should I grind for 10,000 points in order to get a set of like 5 loot boxes when I can just spend $10 and get them? When the matches, even on higher tier, are
I'm
only going to
trying
be
not to
300,
grind my
400.
fangs here because this is microtransactions and and some of my favorite free to plays.
Well, I mean, this is EA. This is what they do. I mean,
Oh, right. This is
microtransactions.
the same people at digital trading cards in a football game and expect people to learn the cash so fast to get the good cards and basically just plus deck of sorts when the next game comes out next year. That's the CA, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's what EA does. EA does that all the time.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this now. EA and I.
I mean, that's what EA does. EA is a cancer on the gaming industry, and until gamers stop buying their products, they're going to keep on spreading their practices, and that's just the way it is. But enough about that. Let's move on to the next news topic. Warner Brothers. Our good old friends at
Is it
Warner
about
Brothers.
is it about another licensed game?
Well, I mean, it's the sequel to their Lord of the Rings, Assassin's Creed, Batman: Arkham Asylum knockoff, where you were this guy fighting against orcs and stuff. Except the ending of the game is locked behind a paywall. Like you have to essentially buy the ending. Kind of like how Capcom did the ending for Dead Rising.
I was about to say, please tell me anything. And this is not the Dead Rising trickery of getting your true. It is.
Well, I mean, it's Warner Brothers. I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay, look. If someone says that Warner Brothers, EA, Ubisoft, Namco Bandai, if someone says they have shady, because I know they have shady DLC practices. Like I know they basically shaft people with their DLC. That's
I
what
was
they
about to
do.
say, what color of Dark Time?
I don't know about that, but they're definitely shady. Like Warner Brothers, you just have to assume, okay, how are they trying to screw me over whenever you buy a product from them? And they've only gotten worse as people continue to spend that type of money on their stuff.
Makes me wonder if we're supporting them unofficially with buying certain Lego products with Batman on them.
Well, not just that. I mean, if they like, okay, like Lego City Undercover wasn't too bad because like Nintendo was behind that, and Nintendo was like, no, you're not. Like, this is going to be the complete game. You're not going to microtransaction it, which was good, even though they charged way too much for that game when it first came out. Like, it was a $50 game, and that's not a $50 game. Lego City Undercover is like a $39.99 at most game. Like, really, once the price goes down, it should be like $20, because it's not like, okay, it's not like it's using a lot of licensing. You know, it's using like stuff that they made. You know, it's not using stuff that they have to pay someone out for. It's not like Lego Marvel where they had to use not DC, Marvel properties, like stuff like that. Like, so there was no reason for it to be that expensive except, money. But I mean, it's Warner Brothers. That's what they like to do. I mean, like when dealing with Warner Brothers, you have to check your pocketbook, check your car to see if the tires are still on it. Look in the engine block to see that your engine's still there. When you get inside the car, check to see if your radio is still there, because they will try to take everything. They will nickel and dime you to death. Our last thing is Ubisoft. Now, I've got something to add for Ubisoft that I would like to hear your thoughts on. But it says here, Assassin's Creed's Origins bonus missions are locked behind a GameStop pre-order.
Did they use a camel for, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean, I just
I
know.
remember seeing the physical advertisement where there's a cutscene of sorts, and then this phrase: unless you pre-order this game.
Yeah, like it's bad for you. You can't get this unless you pre-order it from GameStop. And I'm like,
are you seriously trying to poke fun at yourself? Because this is a bad joke. This is a terrible, terrible joke.
I mean, you would think Ubisoft would figure it out to stop doing this, but they can't. They can't help themselves. They can't.
That's a horse. As in, you're mocking horse DLC, and you're advertising that DLC at the same time, which I see is pointless.
Well, I mean, it is Ubisoft. Well, I'm going to add something that's pissing me off about Ubisoft with this new game. They got a whole bunch of actors in this new game. A whole bunch of white people to play Egyptians. Ancient Egyptians.
Did I hear that right?
No.
All playing
Let me repeat. They got a whole bunch of white actors to play ancient Egyptians.
That was me face palming.
Yeah. Now, I know what some people are going to say. Well, Egyptians aren't necessarily African. Okay.
There's a 22 on that.
Modern Egyptians, you are correct. Modern Egyptians are not necessarily African. It's a panoply of many people who came there and lived there, because Egypt, even back then, was very cosmopolitan because it was off of the Mediterranean. But here's the thing: we're talking about ancient Egypt, okay? And ancient Egypt was a different thing. For one thing, when we think of the pharaohs and their royal families, Egypt was divided into two distinctly places. There was Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Lower Egypt actually was where the money was. Lower Egypt had pharaohs that were dark-skinned. I mean, when you think, it's Africa, dark, okay? As a matter of fact, when Upper Egypt was going broke and they were constantly being invaded by people from the Mediterranean, almost forced it I want to say gunpoint, but they didn't have guns back then. Arrow point and sword point and spear point.
I was about to say, not to mention the rapes of all things.
Well, just all types of stuff. When the two royal dynasties of the Lower Egypt and Northern Egypt united, that was very important. That was very important, and it changed everything. As a matter of fact, one of the greatest civilian leaders of ancient Egypt, Ramses II, very much dark-skinned dude. Very. I mean, of course, it doesn't really matter. And he did his best to spread his seed around, because he had 603 children. That's right. And look, Ramsey slept with everybody. As a matter of fact, if Ramsey was still alive, he'd probably be sleeping with you right now, listeners, because Ramsey's was very, that old saying, "Be fruitful and multiply." Ramsey took that to heart. Okay.
About to say, there's reasons for that, but if anything, assume that there was a lot of errors back then.
Well, I mean, Ramsey's basically in ancient Egypt. He essentially the way he unified northern and the lower and upper Egypt.
Upper and lower Egypt.
Yeah, the way he unified it was he basically married a lot of his rivals' daughters and sisters and stuff, and then he just had a lot of children. It's really hard to just go around killing people when everyone's related to each other, because either way, you're not gonna take out the dynasty, right? The bloodline still goes on. And Ramsey's lived a long time. Like, he lived to be like 83. I'm talking ancient Egypt, 83 friggin' years old.
That was a plentiful amount of time.
Yes. And I'm pretty sure he died in bed. I'm reasonably certain, considering he had 603 children, he definitely died in bed. But that's neither here nor there. Why are we constantly getting white actors to play ancient Egyptians? That's just.
I think it's because these guys are short budgeting, or they really don't know who they are working with when trying to make these things. And I bet you that they made the characters white.
I mean, I hate to break this to you people, but okay, you're talking about the Middle East, right? Like, when people think the Middle East, Egypt, Israel, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, Iran, the Middle East, the last thing I'm thinking is, oh yeah, blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy. No, that would be out of place in the Middle East, really. But that's neither here nor there, because Ubisoft is busy trying to keep Vivendi from devouring them.
Yeah, if anything, their lifeline's getting very short.
Yeah. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, any other news topics you want to bring up before we get to the main topic?
Do you want me to bring up a facepalm I recently heard from yesterday, I think?
Go ahead.
For saying that their employees are cute looking.
Someone got fired because a lady said that one of her co-workers is pretty.
Yes. Who the beep thinks of this? I mean, that's as stupid as being banned for being too good at a game.
Well, I mean, the thing is that it all boils down to context, really. It all boils down to context. What was the context of the situation? Since I don't have enough information to know the context of what was being said, I don't know. So I don't want to jump into it if I don't know the context. Because there are times where someone so is pretty that is kind of offensive, but and I don't know if that was the context there.
That's the thing. What the beep is the circumstances at that location get fired for saying a nice thing.
Well, that's the thing. There are times when someone can say someone looks pretty it seems like it's nice, but it's not. It's actually a form of harassment. So that's the thing. I don't know the context of the situation that the lady was fired in, so I don't want to say, well, that's a horrible thing when I don't know the context.
Yeah. At the moment it sounded horrible, but I want more information on that. Anyway, can we grind some gears here?
I'm just saying. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I guess it's time to get to the main topic. Okay.
Square Enix, we need to talk.
No, this isn't even a need to talk thing. This goes out to Square Enix, the company, and Square Enix fans. Have a seat, grab your favorite teddy bear, your comfort blanket. I have something uncomfortable and unfortunate to tell you. There are only 10 Final Fantasy games. That's it. There are only 10. Everything after Final Fantasy X is not a Final Fantasy game. Okay.
That's the thing. And even the two of us could agree that Final Fantasy X-2 is stretching it.
Final Fantasy X-2 isn't a Final Fantasy game. Final Fantasy. Okay. Let's look at the.
I said X-2 is stretching here, but
I'm not even considering it. It's not even a stretch. It's just not Final Fantasy. Like, okay, let's really look at this. Okay.
Okay.
Let's look at the tropes, the qualities that Final Fantasy games have. Okay. So in the third gen, Hironobu Sakaguchi and his team at Squaresoft made 3 Final Fantasy games: Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3. Okay. These games basically set the tropes that would set the tone for the rest of the franchise. Final Fantasy 1 had epic music, a sweeping storyline, a group 4 characters going on a grand journey to save the world. Final Fantasy. You know, they choose their jobs in the beginning of the game. There's a side quest where you can get a rat tail and then take it to somebody else and then become more powerful versions of those base job classes. It set the standard on which Final Fantasy was built. Final Fantasy II, while it didn't have the class
more
system,
story,
gave you a deeper, more engrossing story and darker in tone, because Final Fantasy II had some things where it's like, okay, you need to go fight this dude in order to prevent this town from getting destroyed. And it turns out you come back and you find all these dead people. It's like, Jesus, what the heck happened here? Right? And then Final Fantasy III gave us the job class system. Now, up until this point, only Final Fantasy II had like characters with personality and stories and stuff like that. Final Fantasy I, you were kind of blank templates. Final Fantasy
it was a
III.
I was saying we had start built in, and then we had the job system created.
Well, yeah, but Final Fantasy III, even though you had the job system, none of these characters really had personality. I mean, it's still like only 2 of the original 3 Final Fantasies on the NES had characters that had personality. Final Fantasy I, those characters, like literally, there was no difference between the characters except what job they had. And Final Fantasy III, the same thing. There was literally no difference between these characters except for what job they had. Because in the beginning of the game, they're all Onion Knights, and like aside from some minor stat differences, there's really no difference between any of the characters. So, but still, overall, pretty good franchise. Okay, off to a good foot. Then
come to the NES era. I mean, SNES era.
To the SNES era, which I will call the golden age of Final Fantasy, in my opinion. The golden age of Final Fantasy. We get Final Fantasy IV, which, while we don't have an in-depth job system, what we do have are some epic characters, epic storylines. It's dark, but not too dark. The only downside, and this is my own personal gripe, the main character's name is Cecil, and that's just lame.
Trust me, if you put these characters, then there'll be some interesting tales to tell.
I'm just saying, it's like this village was destroyed by the dark evil, but we shall have our revenge. He shall come for you. Who? Cecil. Really? Seriously, a dude named Cecil?
I think that's the reaction I'd have if I heard that, because his names are so common and yet they don't invoke fear at all.
Seriously? That's who you're...
I mean, if an evil name, really work into some lore with that.
I'm just saying, Cain, who is initially like your enemy and he winds up joining you, Cain has a cooler name than Cecil. Okay? As a matter of fact, I thought he was the main character initially because he had a much cooler name. But that's neither here nor there. Final Fantasy 2, 4, great soundtrack, great graphics, great character development. You control a party that changes quite a bit. It's very dynamic.
Story-wise and gameplay-wise.
Yeah, there's twists and turns, and even with the shoddy North American localization, has one of the best quotes ever. "You spoony bard." with
even though this
color. Yeah,
that's a good line, and even though it was named, it's known as 4 around the world, and it's actually pretty times. I did try it a little.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 2. For me, Final Fantasy 2, aka Final Fantasy 4, is one of my favorite Final Fantasies. But the only on the SNES, the only one that eclipses it. Like I was like, how can they follow this up? And then they released Final Fantasy 6, and it was like, okay, yeah, they followed it up. But I'm going by in terms of what was released worldwide, not what just was what was in America. Okay. So then they do Final Fantasy 5. Now, Final Fantasy 5 has the job system. It has the same great graphics of Final Fantasy 4, although the story is not quite as good as Final Fantasy 4's. It's not. The villain is just kind of.
But it works, doesn't it?
It gets the job done. But the end. Look, listen. If your final villain is an evil tree. That's just.
I'm sorry, I had to use that joke because evil tree. The next slide will probably be what I said earlier.
Seriously, the final villain in Final Fantasy V is an evil tree. I'm sorry. No. Like all of these terrible things that have happened in Final Fantasy IV because of an evil tree. Okay, then.
Hey, if anything, it's one of those. It feels a trope. The come out of nowhere villain.
I'm just saying, an evil tree, not cool. But then they come out with Final Fantasy VI, aka Final Fantasy III here in America, and oh my god,
This is one of the Final Fantasies and I'm just gonna say this before you do. This is a game that was one of the keystones of RPG history.
Yes. I would say that Final Fantasy VI is one of the best. Final Fantasy VI is not only one of the best Final Fantasies ever created, if not the best Final Fantasy in my opinion. I would say that Final Fantasy VI is one of the best. It's one of the top. I would call it one of the top 10 seminal RPGs that you have to play in order to say I'm an RPG fan. Like people who say I'm a fan of RPGs but they never played Final Fantasy VI, I look at you and I'm like, no, you're not an RPG fan. not a video game RPG fan. You might like the idea of role-playing games, but you're not a video game RPG fan because Final Fantasy VI is like you have to have played it. It's like you can't say you're a fan of American literature and you never read Catcher in the Rye or The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn or Mark or Tom Sawyer or Catcher in the Rye or I already said Catcher in the Rye. What's another one? To Kill a Mockingbird. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
So, Final Fantasy VI, it's one of the best RPGs ever created. And, if you're an RPG fan, you have to have played it.
As I said, it's one of the key of the time, and it's one of the best known RPGs of all, with Chrono Trigger and back then Super Mario RPG, but that's a different story as far as I know.
Coincidence that all three of these games were created by Squaresoft? I think not, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, and then we get RPG. The first Final Fantasy I actually completed, and one of the best Final Fantasies, and probably one of Red Fox's least favorites.
What, Final Fantasy VII?
Huh?
What, Final Fantasy 7?
Yep.
Yeah. Basically, to me, I call the fifth gen it's the start of the downfall of Final Fantasy as being, in my opinion, a good series. Because Final Fantasy 7, aside from the graphics, to me is not a good Final Fantasy. Like, I would put it on par with Final Fantasy 5.
How so?
Well, because to me, Cloud Strife is too much of a stereotype. Um, Sephiroth is a cool looking villain, but once you really think about what his motivations are, he's just really lame. Like, he's like, I'm going to destroy the world because I am the clone baby of an alien. That's it? that that's why you're going to destroy the world? Seriously? That's it? Just you're a clone? Really? And the characters just seem to be very cliche, like at least in the American translation of the game. In the Japanese version of Final Fantasy VII, if you ever get a chance to play the Japanese translation of it, the translation is a lot better. But I didn't play the Japanese translation. I played the American version, and I mean, oh god, there are no characters that I like in Final Fantasy VII. I don't like Cloud Strife. I don't like Tifa Lockhart. I don't like Barrett. I don't like Sid. I don't like Yuffie. I don't like Kate Sith. Well, Vincent's cool. I like Vincent, but he's basically the morph guy. Who else? Who else doing it? Red 13's okay.
Yeah, he's one of grounded characters as far as I got it.
But that's it. And like, to me, in order for Final Fantasy to be good, I need characters that I like with engrossing stories that I care about, with a villain that's like, I'm like, man, this villain is awesome.
For that, with all 9 characters that you get throughout the game, the most Red 13, Aerith, and the characters to a degree.
Yeah, I liked Aerith until they killed her off, and I had to completely build had to rebuild my entire damn team with a new healer, because the one character who was made to heal people is killed off.
And third,
like a third of the way through the game. But that's neither here nor there. Okay, to you, that's like one of your favorite Final Fantasies, and I don't neglect your belief.
I say it's one of my favorites, but it's not my top, at least.
Yeah. To me, Final Fantasy VII is kind of like the beginning of the downfall of Final Fantasy, because basically, and JRPGs in general, because you got a lot of Me Too RPGs being made for the PlayStation, where everyone's like, I want to create a character like Cloud Strife. When you think about it, Cloud Strife is not a good character.
That's one of the reasons why, because Cloud, despite being the most known character of all, he has to forward in time in order to know the stuff they had.
No, because I remember what it did. Because Sony put like $200 million into marketing that game. It sold very well. But the problem is that Final Fantasy VII just is not a good Final Fantasy. And it kind of like, from there it kind of went downhill. It's like Final Fantasy VII, people were sold because of the marketing. I have to have this game, and they got it, because a lot of the people who claim to be Final Fantasy fans, you ask them, when did you start playing Final Fantasy? It's Final Fantasy VII. Why? Because of the marketing, not because they were fans of Final Fantasy.
Because of the graphics, I bet.
And the graphics and the marketing. But in order for them to see the graphics, because they didn't play the game, was because of the marketing. It always comes down to the marketing, not because it was a good game. So then we go to Final Fantasy VIII, which, if they could have made, they managed to do something I never thought possible.
And me hate it too.
They made a more lame protagonist than Cloud Strife.
Believe it or not, I actually had a grind against the game battle system itself than the main character, and he's only one problem.
Well, the battle system. The thing I'll say about the battle system in Final Fantasy VIII is this: any game that basically, if you grind for basically 2 hours in the beginning of the game on some of the like enemies that you fight, like basically you can grind against the Tyrannosaurus, whatever it's called, in the beginning of the game, and basically you can extract magic because that's how you get magic in the game. You extract spells from enemies, so you can grind on this one type of enemy in the beginning of the game for like 2-3 hours, and basically you can steamroll through the first half of the game just destroying things with that spell. It's ridiculous. It's cheap.
You can. Oh, I said I have real grind against that system, and that's above in problems with Final Fantasy VIII. And yeah. I'm just gonna say this right now: stats to your magic. Cheap.
Yeah, I think the extract materia kind of broke that game. I know what they were going for, but it was. Like, it just wasn't well executed. But still, overall, Final Fantasy VIII is not a good Final Fantasy. In some ways, it has a more intriguing story than Final Fantasy VII. But the characters are so insipid and flat that you just don't care.
If I could say that Cloud has more character, there's a problem.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They made a character more annoying than Cloud Strife. Which is amazing, which is Squall Leonhardt, and then they tried to rein it back in with Final Fantasy IX,
which actually made it a lot more fair and fun to work on some game systems.
Yeah, Final Fantasy IX
tried to get certain spells in.
Yeah, Final Fantasy IX went back to old school, almost too old school for a lot of gamers. So. They didn't like it. Like, I think Final Fantasy IX didn't sell all that well. Neither did 8. But then again, neither of those games had $200 million put into their marketing budget. So, yeah.
Apparently, that marketing helps the game, and thus, became a phenomenon. 8 and 9 just.
I mean, but look, the only reason 7 becomes a phenomenon is because they spent $200 million to market it. Here's the thing, okay. Like, Chrono Trigger is a phenomenon because it's genuinely a very good game. Final Fantasy VI is a phenomenon because it's genuinely a very good game. Super Mario RPG for the SNES is a phenomenon because it's genuinely a good game. It wasn't marketed to hell like Final Fantasy VII. Neither was Chrono Trigger, neither was Final Fantasy VI. And yet those are phenomenons because they're genuinely good games. The only reason Final Fantasy VII is a phenomenon is because someone spent $200 million marketing it, not because it's a good game. That's my point. Like when Final Fantasy moved from the Nintendo platforms to Sony, it was the beginning of the downhill spiral of the Final Fantasy brand.
I was going to say, and if anybody's trying to keep up with us, that's when certain experimental things came out.
Yeah.
And I mean by Final Fantasy Spirits Within.
Yeah. Final Fantasy Spirits Within was the death knell of the Final Fantasy brand, but that's neither here nor there. Because we're not talking about that crappy movie. We're not talking about the crappy movie.
Yeah, if anything, I consider it because I think around that time when that movie took it over, that's when took Square out. It had to and dance with Enix.
Well, that movie basically cost them to lose a lot of money, and they so much so that they fired the director of it, which was Hironobu Sakaguchi. Now, here's the thing: even though the 5th gen 3 Final Fantasy games, in my opinion, are not that good, they still are much better than what came later on during the 6th gen and the 7th gen, and now the 8th gen.
I was gonna say, slow down, buddy. Let's get one gen at a time, and it's probably one of my mixed feelings about the series as a whole. And the last is
Yes.
Final Fantasies.
The last
The 10
Final
series.
Fantasy, the last Final Fantasy, in my opinion, is Final Fantasy X. The reason I don't consider 10-2 to be a Final Fantasy is because there's one hallmark that all 10 of the Final Fantasies have in common. There are no sequels in Final Fantasy. Each game
this is where
is its own
sequels start
thing.
getting in there. And,
yeah, that's the thing. Like Final Fantasy.
Years.
That's the thing. Final Fantasy doesn't have sequels. So once you start adding sequels to Final Fantasy, that's not Final Fantasy. So 10, in my opinion, is the last Final Fantasy. 10-2 is not a Final Fantasy game. It's a spin-off. It's its own thing. So it uses the name, but it's not Final Fantasy. So 10, aside from Titus, is a nice swan song for Hironobu Sakaguchi because if you ignore Titus, who is perhaps one of the most annoying protagonists in video game history.
I was going to say, last minute, the most famous last minute entry in video game history.
Oh God! Oh God! Oh Jesus! Jesus! Titus is a poster child for why birth control is such an important thing. I'll leave it there.
God.
But that's neither here nor there. If you ignore Titus and just go with Yuna and the other characters, it's a very good game. Great characters, great
most
story.
Famous last-minute character of all time.
It has a great villain. I know everyone thinks that Sin and Jekt is the villain, but really Seymour Guado is a great villain because he on the outside he has this public face of being this I am a hero.
It
turns out he's an evil bastard. And that's awesome.
Seymour is who I call that dark sun. He tries to brighten the world into his views. When the moon comes up, be ready to see in human form.
Yeah. Seymour Guado is a two-faced bastard. So like a good villain, when you finally kill them like permanently, it makes you feel like I'm good. You're gone. That's how it feels when you finally take out Seymour Guado for the final time. It's like this bastard deserves.
It takes 4 runs to get rid of him, and his last run, oh God, it's a pain.
But it was worth it. It was worth it. But anyway, Final Fantasy X, in my opinion, is the last Final Fantasy. We've only gotten 10 Final Fantasy. That's a pretty good run, though. I mean, how many games do you know have 10 games in the franchise? I don't know that many. Okay, except for maybe Mario. But
I was gonna call you out. There's few characters that can pull off 10. Kirby, Mario.
Okay, fine then. Let's take Nintendo IPs off the table. How many franchises do you know can go to 10?
Well, I could joke about how one franchise is scary.
I mean, we could do Madden, but does Madden count as a new game every year? No.
I was gonna say, you need to have quality and constant good release. And as far as I know, the only one that stood up at that point was which is Final Fantasy.
Yep.
Which we're on right now.
The only franchise that has maintained a strong level of quality through 10 or more games is Dragon Quest. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah,
which is still going as far as I know.
Yeah, so I mean, that's neither here nor there. So so you might ask, this podcast is called the title of this BS Busters is the Final Fantasy Fallacy. Well, because here's what I'm about to tell you, and this is why I say that.
Let me help you with this one. If you're going to count 11 through 15,
yeah,
we're going to grind your hopes of being called RPGs into the ground. So get ready to hide on your and keep your teddies as shields.
Yeah, so don't get angry. Just stop and think about what I'm saying. Final Fantasy XI is an MMO. Final Fantasy, that's not what Final Fantasy has ever been. It's not supposed to be an MMO. Final Fantasy is the personal journey of a player on a journey. You controlling a party of adventurers. Your story, not the story of a million people playing at the same time on a server. So no, Final Fantasy 11 is not Final Fantasy.
And
Final Fantasy 12, and
I was going to say 14 is going to be in the same category.
Oh yes, yes. Falcon Launch, the lack of Final Fantasy Tactics. Don't worry, I'm about to get to that. Falcon Launch, Final Fantasy 12 is Final Fantasy Tactics, the RPG. It takes place in the same world as Final Fantasy Tactics. It has a lot of the same world characteristics as Final Fantasy Tactics. It has judges
Battle system.
And Numo and Vieira and like, I mean, you know, it's Final Fantasy Tactics, the RPG. Now, had Square Enix said we're gonna take the Final Fantasy Tactics moniker, make it into an RPG, like a straight up RPG set in that universe, which they kind of tried to do with that game on the PS1 that was set in the same universe as Final Fantasy Tactics as well. I forgot the name of it. Vandal Hearts, I think it was called Vandal Hearts. Like basically, yeah. I mean, I would be cool with that. But Final Fantasy 12 is not a Final Fantasy game either.
As I said, I got to grind against start of real Final Fantasy trouble because everybody knows me. I'm a gameplay proficient, and oh god, that system, battle system.
Well, here's the sad thing about Final Fantasy Tactics. Final Fantasy Tactics is a good game. It's not a Final Fantasy game, but it's a good game. It's fine. It's fine and dandy for what it is. But then we get to
Tactics is not a bad game, and I consider it its own series.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Final Fantasy 12 is a RPG version of a Final Fantasy Tactics game. That doesn't bother me, and I'm quite happy about it because I like Final Fantasy Tactics. I have all 3 games. I have Final Fantasy Tactics for the PS1. I have Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance 2. I have all 3 of those games. I love them.
I got Advance and Advance 2.
Yeah, I like Final Fantasy Tactics. I think the first game is overly complicated and a little too dark. I think
Tactics for the PlayStation systems.
I have the first one for the PlayStation.
You're thinking that was a hard one?
That's the first. Yeah, the first one is the. Well, here's the thing. The guy who made Final Fantasy Tactics, I played his first game. His first game was Tactics Ogre, which was the second game in the Ogre Battle series on the SNES, and it's basically the same thing as Final Fantasy Tactics, except no, it's the same damn thing. They're basically identical games. So yeah, the first game is needlessly dark. Final Fantasy Tactics Advance and Advance 2 are not quite as dark and not nearly as complicated, needlessly complicated. Like the original Final Fantasy Tactics, it's like you can basically enemies who have a birthday on a certain month in game can do more damage to other types of enemies who were born on another month. I mean, that's how stupidly, needlessly complex Final Fantasy Tactics is.
That is utterly. Can I say it?
Go ahead.
Bullshit.
Well, I mean, it's too much. It's literally too much, which is why I'm glad they did Final Fantasy Tactics 2. Advance and Advance 2, because those games are a lot more pared down, a lot less.
It's a lot more in depth.
Well, it's not as needlessly complicated. Like I shouldn't have to be like, oh man, this guy was born in February. This other character was born in May. This February dude's gonna get his ass kicked. Like that's too much. That's too much.
Too much tactical depth.
Yeah, I mean the thing about Final Fantasy Tactics, all 3 games, is that it rewards you for figuring out how to break the game. figuring out how to use the laws within the game or bend them in order to get what you want. Like, for example, in the original Final Fantasy Tactics, you had a job called the Numerancer, who basically like is all about numbers. So basically, like the Numerancer could basically, if a character's health ends with an odd number, they could do damage that would basically take a third off of their health. Or if characters were sitting on odd numbered tiles, they could do a spell that would do massive damage to all the characters who are on odd numbered tiles. So it's like you could figure out ways to break the game. But that's the wonderful thing about Final Fantasy Tactics, is figuring out ways how to break the game, how to use the player systems within the game in order to beat it, in order to do things you're not supposed to do, like how to steal items from characters you're not supposed to steal from, how to get really powerful items by stealing them from characters that technically you're not supposed to be able to steal from. Like, I mean, that's cool. I like that, but that's neither here nor there. Final Fantasy 12 is a Final Fantasy Tactics RPG. It's not Final Fantasy. It's not a Final Fantasy game. And then we get to what I like to call the diarrhea of the Final Fantasy series.
The trilogy of ball kicks.
Well, I mean, 12 is good. It's not Final Fantasy. But then we get to the diarrhea of the Final Fantasy franchise.
AKA the kicks.
Yes. The diarrhea the diarrhea of Final Fantasy series, which in my opinion is, of course, the 13 trilogy. 13-1, 13-2, 13-3. I know it's not called 13-3. It's called Lightning Returns, but it's 13-3.
And if anything, I got a real grind against it, and officially for Final Fantasy after this point, because the battle system is to the point I wanted to scream my head off.
You want to know what Final Fantasy 13 and 13-2 and 13-3 look like in terms of the combat system? It looks like someone ate a whole bunch of gummy bears and gummy worms and ice cream and pizza, and then they puked. And it's like, wow, this puke is all of these, it's all the colors of the rainbow. It's gorgeous puke, but it's puke nonetheless. That's what it feels like playing Final Fantasy 13. It's like, this looks great. It's garbage, but it looks great.
And it also gained the and one part of this trilogy gained its own nickname, and you probably could rant on that one easy.
What nickname? I don't. What?
I was saying that one of trash even got its own nickname for it, and I bet you could easily rant on that one.
I guess, but yeah, Final Fantasy 13 is just it's god awful. The entire trilogy is god awful. The first game is terrible. Final Fantasy 13 should be a lesson on how not to make an RPG, and Final Fantasy 13-2 is a lesson in how not to make a sequel to an RPG. And Final Fantasy 13-3, they just stopped trying and they just ripped off Majora's Mask.
Yeah, I was about to say, and Final Fantasy 1, known as Final Hallway 13. I mean, Final Fantasy is Final Hallway 13, as far as I remember the nickname. Final Fantasy 13-2 did the most atrocious thing of all, which to a story writer was going to rip hairs out real. How the beat do you script time travel into a DLC trap in this game? And then Final Fantasy 13-3, you say with Majora's Mask, though it's a lame.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just simply saying that Final Fantasy 13-3 Final Fantasy 13-3 is not a good game. It's also not a good Final Fantasy. But then again, it's not Final Fantasy. None of these games are Final Fantasy. And then we get to the last one in the series thus far, Final Fantasy 15.
If anybody wonders, we skipped 14 because
it's an MMO.
It's not an MMORPG.
Yeah, it's not Final Fantasy. 15, which
Uh,
God, Jesus.
this is Final Fantasy Cross, and that's what I would say on a nice. Red Fox got harsher words for it.
I have many harsh words to say for it. Those of you who are watching, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave questions in the live chat and we'll answer them at the end of this podcast because we're almost through with this section in the next 10 minutes or so. Here's what I'll say about Final Fantasy 15. Final Fantasy 15 is a fine and dandy beat 'em up with RPG elements. Kind of, sort of. Is it a Final Fantasy game? Hell no. Definitely not. You can put all the Moogles on a Moogle fuzzy dice in your car, driving around, really smooth dudes who look like they're metrosexuals, hanging out with their bros, driving in a car, no women around whatsoever, kind of creepy.
It's in sync Final Fantasy.
You can. It's worse than NSYNC Final
I'm sorry,
Fantasy.
I had to make the joke here.
It's worse than NSYNC Final Fantasy. You can have all the so-called heterosexual dudes, no women around, hanging out together. For what reason I don't know, driving around by themselves on a road trip, bro. All you want to. That shit's not Final Fantasy. Okay?
You ain't getting away from this one.
You're not fooling anybody, buddy. You're not fooling anybody. But that's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there. I guess it's time to get to my overall conclusion. Okay, Final Fantasy as we know it is dead. It doesn't exist anymore. It's gone.
Say I agree with you on that. And I was honestly hoping for Elisa to a chance to see it try to come back, but
well, there is a ray of hope
if they're trying to, especially if they're trying to do remake Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, you still holding out hope for that turd?
I got a small ray of hope. So if anything, that part is going to be crushed easy.
It's like that song by Bonnie Tyler. You're holding out for a hero, huh? You're holding out for a hero. but that's
yeah. I don't consider 7 a ray of hope.
Well, I'm not holding out for a hero. I'm not holding out for a hero. I already have my Final Fantasy. Okay, for those of you who like the old school sprite-based Final Fantasy games where you go around a huge world with interesting characters, fighting interesting bosses, doing what you need to do, there's hope. You've got Bravely Default and Bravely Second, and now Octopath Traveler.
Those are the games that RPGs actually exist still, when not in the care of somebody like EA.
Yeah. So there's your Final Fantasy, folks. There's your 2D kind of 2D pseudo old school Final Fantasy. For those of you who wanted Final Fantasy to embrace a more modern aesthetic and be more, how can I put this?
Mechanical?
Well, be more visceral, have more visceral combat, but still not completely throw away the active time battle system. We got a game for you. It's called Xenoblade Chronicles and Xenoblade Chronicles X, and now Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Those are your Final Fantasy games. Why? Because they're made by a lot of the people that made Final Fantasy, and they embrace what Final Fantasy has, which is interesting, engrossing characters with tactical, choice-based combat where you actually have to think about what you're doing and plan things out. There's depth to it. Not just button mashing and I equipped a better weapon. Well, that's not necessarily always the best choice. Sometimes having a weapon that has elemental strengths or weaknesses is good. So, with that being said, that is essentially my thesis for the Final Fantasy fallacy. So there you go. That's it. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the live chat. We'll answer them. Your thoughts, Joel?
I actually enjoyed the Final Fantasies that I did play, which is, for the record, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is pretty much a good handful of the good series. And before anybody asks, I did try to see how other game fantasy series went by visiting other people's places out. They never left a good taste in my mouth.
I can appreciate that.
And me and Red Fox will disagree on 10 and 10 2 somewhat.
Yeah.
I can agree that 10-2 is not at times so fantasy, but at the same time I consider it the last of the Final Fantasy in a sense. I said in a sense because seriously, you only get 3 heroes and you have to change their that's
outfits.
More fan service than that's more fan service than Final Fantasy.
I was just like, it has a sequel. Final Fantasy is not supposed to have sequels. That's just the one thing. It's like, no, this is not supposed to have sequels. If you do sequel, it's like the Legend of Zelda series doesn't have sequels. There are no sequels in Legend of Zelda, and that's good.
True.
Because each game is its own thing. Yeah, there's certain tropes that carry through. Like there's gonna be a legendary sword you have to get. Link has a shield. You know, there's fighting, there's dungeons, there's treasures, but there's no sequels, and I'm okay with that because every game is something new. Now, I would be worried if Nintendo's like, we're making a Breath of the Wild 2. I'm like, shit, no sequel. Do something different. Do something new.
Hey,
no sequels.
You have to look at who's in charge of that ship when that happens.
Well, Eiji Aonuma hasn't effed up like the people over there at Square Enix who keep.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They tanked an entire franchise, and the people are still working there. Yet Hironobu Sakaguchi gave 10. I mean, you know, the quality varied towards the end, but overall, good games, a good run of great games. And a shitty movie comes out, and they're like, you got to go. And yet someone cost them billions of dollars, and they're like, nah. Well, we'll give you another chance.
And that's the sad thing in a sense. Final Fantasy, he had to give up the Final Fantasy, the game series that made him who he that made him save the company. He had to let that go.
Yeah, it's messed up. I mean, let's just keep it real. It's totally messed up that Final Fantasy doesn't exist as we know it. It's not the franchise it used to be, and it's sad because Square Enix watered it down themselves. Like right now, the guy who made Final Fantasy 15, he's like, yeah, well, we're not going to make another Final Fantasy. I'm like, that's bullshit because why is it that on the 3rd gen you could get 3 Final Fantasies, 4th gen 3 Final Fantasies, plus 3 other really strong RPGs. You could get 3 Final Fantasies, even on the PS1, 3 Final Fantasies. On the PS2, that's when when the productivity started going downhill.
Yeah, to the point. Even though some people are going to say, but this game didn't take so long. No, it was once part of Final Fantasy trash, and so Final Fantasy 12. It turned into and then evolved into 15, and withdrew development Hades to come to our door. And this, Duke Nukem would laugh at how much of a of a mess that was. And he's been gone for how long?
Well, it's just sad. It's sad because I grew up with this franchise. I love it. Um, unlike Jewel here, I played every single Final Fantasy. Like not the first three because I wasn't alive except for the last one. But like I went back and I played. Well, yeah, I went back and I played Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, and then I played Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6, and then I played Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9, and beat them. Like I beat 100% all of them. And then I played 10. I was like, except for Titus, this is a good game. And I played 12, and 12 is not terrible. The battle system. Okay, if you're going into Final Fantasy 12 thinking the next Final Fantasy, you're going to be disappointed. If you go into it looking at it, this is a Final Fantasy Tactics RPG, makes perfect sense. Much easier to get into. But that's neither here nor there. Final Fantasy doesn't exist anymore, as we know it. There are substitutes we can have. Wait, was it Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Track sequel to Wind Waker? No. They were set in the same world, but Phantom Hourglass takes place hundreds of years after Wind Waker, and Spirit Tracks takes place hundreds of years after that. Like they take place
There's
in the same
difference.
Yeah, think of it like this. Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons take place in the same universe as Link's Awakening, but they're both different games. Yeah, the sprites are similar and there's certain things, and they're kind of connected in that you're dealing with villains that know each other, but they're still different games. The mechanics that they have are different from one another, so they aren't direct sequels to one another. As a matter of fact, technically speaking, Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons are prequels to Link's Awakening. So yeah, but The Legend of Zelda doesn't really have direct sequels. The only like even the Mario games aren't direct sequels to one another. Like Super Mario Brothers, really, like Super Mario Brothers 2 is not a direct sequel to Super Mario Brothers. Super Mario Brothers 3 is not a sequel to Super Mario Brothers 2. Super Mario World is not a sequel to Super Mario Brothers 3. 64 is not a sequel to World. Sunshine is not a sequel to 64. Galaxy is not a sequel to 2. Now, Galaxy 2 is kind of a sequel, but not really. It's more like a remix, if you will, of the first Galaxy. But I guess you could kind of say that's a sequel. But that's one of the few sequels that are in that franchise. Because other than that, there are no sequels in Mario games, which I'm happy with. Except for New Super Mario Brothers 2. That game sucks. It goes too far. But that's neither here nor there. Anything else you want to bring up, Jewel, before we wrap things up? Anything.
I was checking, and right now I'm just trying not to facepalm at how there's more trouble to go over. But then again, I'm just going to have a good laugh at something that I recently heard last week that actually makes me wonder how people are going to take. And that would be hearing how much value Nintendo is compared.
Oh yeah, I forgot to. Yes. Yes. Currently, Nintendo is worth more than Sony in terms of market share. Like Nintendo's market share is like 58.4 billion, and Sony's market share is like 54.6.
Yeah, but if anybody wants to get, you gotta consider all the branches that everything that Nintendo and Sony get their hand.
Yeah.
And how many things does, as far as I know?
Well, Nintendo just does gaming.
There's the Switch, there's the 3DS family, and their internet market, which is the mobile device.
Yeah, but the mobile devices aren't like the mobile devices aren't making money like they're
directions they're going.
well, their mobile games aren't making money like their traditional gaming stuff.
Yeah.
Because
Then you could go. Yeah.
because mobile stuff is like it's hot until it's not. Like Miitomo was hot, but is there anyone who's still using Miitomo?
There's one in the back.
I mean, I deleted mine off my phone because I wasn't even using it. I had Fire Emblem.
That's why.
Yeah, I had Fire Emblem, but I took it off because I was like, I have real Fire Emblem. Why do I need this shit?
I haven't gotten either of those. Anything. I'm kind of lucky.
I had Pokemon Go for like 2 minutes for like a day, and I was like, this is stupid. I deleted it.
Pokemon Duel I still got, so
nope.
They're kind of out with me on that part.
I was like, you know what? Why would I want this microtransaction BS when I can have a real game? So no, and I think a lot of gamers are like that. Yeah, there's some people. I haven't had a Nintendo game in years who play it for like maybe 2 or 3 months and then they stop doing it. And I mean that's I mean and they might spend $5 here, $10 there, but that's not going to be as much money as someone who's spending $30, $40, $50, $60 on a.
I was about to say
3 or 4 games a year. Yeah, so. Mobile is nice, still not, but I mean, and we'll also have to remember, Nintendo isn't carrying, billions of dollars in debt. So really their market share has been higher than Sony for years because even when they were only at like 40 billion market share, they weren't spending, they weren't carrying billions of dollars in debt. Like Sony's carrying like 20-30 billion dollars in debt. So really their market share.
How many branches has Sony been in so far, as far as I know? Let's see.
They've got between 13 and 11 branches.
There's PlayStation series, the Vita series, which I'm.
Well, that's all under one thing. PlayStation division is Vita and is their home console and the handheld. Okay. Although they kind of abandoned the handheld, so it doesn't exist anymore anyway.
There's items. Then they
have their TVs. They have their music division, which is their records and their CDs and their artists. They have their life. They have their cameras. Sony actually also does cameras. They have damn. They have their life insurance division. I already said that, but it bears repeating.
They got their hands in a lot of spots.
They have their banking division. Well, they're a conglomerate.
Hold on.
It's kind of hurtful.
Hold it. You said they had a banking division.
Yeah, they have a banking division.
I was just remembering that the nation of that their HQ's home country was allowing them to make nation loans.
Yes. Sony has a banking division. Like they own shares in the Bank of Japan. So basically, they made loans to themselves, and that, which is why when I tell people Sony, like part of Sony is nationalized, I mean they took out a national loan that they have not paid back yet to the Bank of Japan, which is owned by the government of Japan, which is owned by the citizens of Japan. So part of Sony is national, like the part of Sony, I think like 5 to 10 billion yen, no, $5 to $10 billion is held by the citizens of Japan. Part of it is nationalized. They own a part of Sony, which is why you'll never see Sony get broken up. Because then they're never going to, I mean, they're not going to see their money anyway, but they have to have the pretense that they're going to see their money. But if you break up Sony's conglomerate, you're never going to see that money. Because
that's the reason why I asked. That's the reason why I asked that question. I heard that Sony has a bank.
Yeah.
Division.
Yeah, they have a division where they own shares in a bank.
That made me wonder, WTF. They're loaning out to they're on loan to the government.
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a business owning shares in a bank. I mean, a lot of businesses diversify themselves once they get to a certain size. Like Coca-Cola has stuff in various parts, you know, of they don't just do Coke.
Yeah, but I know that being linked to the entire nation, that's a little bit of a surprise to me. At least they wouldn't be getting into the banking. It's kind of ironic.
Well, you would be surprised at the amount of industries here in America that have been subsidized by the U.S. government, and therefore by the nation. So, I mean, that's not necessarily new. The problem is that Sony does some real shady stuff, and that's where the problem comes in. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get to two of the questions we have. This is from Trinell83. What would you and Jewel Ryder want from a new Final Fantasy game? You go first, Jewel.
I'm basically a mechanics girl of sorts, so I want the battle system just right to honestly be a fair fight. Especially, I want to have at least a good character working, so you actually could customize and work with your characters, and finally maybe a good story.
Fair enough.
Just characters that we could actually work with, and you could upgrade their stats, that they actually have some personality with them, and that complements it. Then I would actually be a happy little.
Okay, fair enough. I guess it's my turn. What would a game have to have in order for it to be a Final Fantasy to me? Well, here's what it would need to have. First of all, I need to have male characters that look like dudes and not like metrosexuals. I need an art style that makes male characters look badass and not like,
because that feel different, and even if they have a different personality of sorts, like
I'm just tired of androgynous
somebody's
male
solo
characters.
sort.
That's it. I don't want
be confusing.
I don't want any androgynous male characters. Okay, just if someone comes in there and says this is the art and it's a dude that looks like a chick, no. Number two, I want a varied cast of characters. I want male, female, maybe different. Like if you have a world that has multiple different races, have different characters.
Yeah.
Have a Moogle. I don't care. I like Moogles. Have a humanoid.
This is what I was getting into with the character thing.
Yeah.
That you want characters that are able to be worked with. Not not like this female-looking character here. This is a dude that has magic in his soul.
Yeah. What else? What else do I need? I need a battle system that reflects strategic thinking and planning. If I wanted a beat 'em up, I would get a beat 'em up. I want a game that reflects strategic planning. So if that means that we have to go back to an active time battle system, or you have to steal the battle system from Xenoblade Chronicles, I'm good with that. Because that rewards strategic thinking and not just, press button to hit this guy 15 times.
This is how I was saying in my first part, where I want a fair battle. I think about what I'm doing and lets me decide.
Yeah. And let's see what else. Oh, and give me a villain that I actually that actually is villainous and not like some dude where it's like, no.
No last minute villainy.
I need
villain trees.
I need real villains, because look, you're talking to someone who grew up in the age of Kefka and Lavos and the Sinistrals from the Lufia series. Like these are villains. It's like, damn, these people have to be fought. I don't want to have villains where it's like, well, he's actually got a good idea. like they did in Final Fantasy 12, which was just stupid. I need straight up villains. Like I need straight up absolute villains, like evil. You fight them, they die, and you feel good about killing them villains. So overall, just the polar opposite of what they're doing at Square Enix right now for their Final Fantasy franchise, which is why these games will never be made. But yeah, those are all the questions from Chanel83. I'm glad everyone who's viewing viewed. If you would like to see more fantastic content from us, ding the bell when this video is over so you get information when upcoming videos are coming up and stuff like that. Jewel, you have anything you want to pimp out before you wrap things up?
Yes, I'm basically trying to think of how to do a beyond level 1 review of something that I haven't finished. But otherwise, I'm mostly doing all right with stuff right now.
And what game is this?
Beyond level 1 is my review of a game that's level because, come on, it's a tutorial for star's sake.
Well, what game is it?
And the current one is Stories.
It's what?
Monster Hunter Stories.
Oh yeah. That game looks like a lot of fun. I'm gonna get that game soon. Not right now though. I'm busy. I have too many other games I'm playing right now. So and plus I'm saving my energy because Mario comes out next week, and
to remind me of that one,
yeah.
especially since I've been hearing that song.
Yeah, Mario comes out next week. Yeah, I'm not even watching anything else about it. I'm like, look, I'm gonna wait until I get the game, and then I'm gonna upload some footage because
I'm only listening to the music, and that's pretty neat, at least.
Yeah, I'm just gonna have fun. When I get to the world with the dinosaur, I'm just gonna go around as a T-Rex. It's like, now I am Yoshi. Ha 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 ha. Sorry, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, Mr. Red Fox signing out. I'll be doing a new show this Wednesday with Jewel called Hump Day, where we're going to be trying to think of ways to bring back Gauntlet, the game. The one that in the arcades, your wizard is almost dead. Find health quickly.
Yeah, though, get ready for a lot of nerd talk there.
Yeah. Your warrior has gained a level. you have unlocked a chest and it contained a death. Use magic.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that's an evil to hear. The moment that you hear you open the chest and head. Oh gods, run!
Yeah. That's why I liked Gauntlet Legends on the N64, because once you beat the game, you got the anti-death halo. So then, if you had a chest, it's like, I know death is in there. You open it, and it's like, come here, death, I'm going to absorb your health. But that's neither here nor there. Good night, folks. We have another Sci-Fi Power Hour coming up next week, Saturday, BS Busters, Sunday, same bat time, same bat place. Enjoy, peace, good night, arrivederci.
And enjoy your